Bringing you live here with Eric Rosenwald. Eric is down at the U.S.-Mexico border in Arizona. Today, he'll be giving us, throughout the entire day, actually, a special firsthand look at what it's like to actually drive through the U.S. border and talk about the issues that are going on within the border wall, construction of the border wall, the different kinds of ecological destruction issues, and just so much more that we have for you today. On top of here with Eric, we also have Lycan Jordahl. Lycan is a special guest that we have here who's a Borderlands campaigner and a former Park Service employee at the Oregon Park. So I want to thank both of you for attending, for joining us today and being able to broadcast this amazing coverage for everyone here. I wanted to start off with Eric. Eric, you're right now in Arizona, getting towards the border wall. Can you tell us where you're at and what's the plan for today for everyone?
So right now I'm about 30 miles west of Tucson, Arizona. I'm heading towards Ajo and the Oregon Pipe National Monument. I'm doing a visual tour, a guide of what it's like to drive through these areas through Oregon Pipes. So after this broadcast, I will throughout the day be doing broadcast reception permitting. It's an isolated area, so sometimes it's bad reception. So what I did here was I still have a very good reception. That's why it's a perfect spot for me to join in and us to talk about this. But it's sort of a driving tour. I'll be getting out of the vehicle, showing some things. I'll be going to the actual border in Lukeville, Arizona is the name of the town that's very close to where Lycan is doing a lot of his work. So I'll be filming, hopefully actually have the camera going so you could see what is going on in front of the vehicle, narrating like that. So it's just an exciting way to bring people down to this area, bring awareness to it.
Great stuff, Eric. And then Lycan, I see that you're right now based in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Can you tell us about what you're going to be talking about today for everyone here?
Yeah, for sure. So glad to be here, and I'm really excited for your trip today, Eric. You're doing what so many people aren't able to do themselves, which is actually firsthand visit these sites where the wall is going up, see the damage, report on what's actually happening on the ground. And Oregon Pipe, where you're headed today, is one of the most incredible places in Arizona that's been absolutely decimated by border wall construction. A 30-foot wall has essentially ripped across the entire southern boundary of that monument, stopping all wildlife migration, destroying protected plant species like the saguaro cactus, and really changing the evolutionary history of the Sonoran Desert in some really horrific ways. So happy to join you here and help kind of orient your trip to see the damage for yourself. And yeah, glad you're down there.
Great.
You know, Lycan, you've told us a lot just even before the recording started about how much experience you have down at the border wall. Can you tell us a little bit about that experience, why you started working down there, and then what brought you to where you're at today?
For sure. Yeah. So, in a lot of ways, I started my career with the National Park Service. Growing up as a kid, I desperately wanted to be a park ranger, and that was like my all-time dream, like so many other people. I worked for the Park Service for about 2.5 years at a number of different areas, but one of those was Oregon Pipe, where you're headed today, Eric. And in my time there, I was just astounded by the amount of damage Border Patrol activity was inflicting on protected public lands. Border Patrol vehicles were driving thousands of miles off-road in designated wilderness, ripping up sensitive soils, destroying plants, harassing animals. And I was stunned that the Park Service was really unwilling to be critical of all of the destruction border security operations were inflicting. So I was working at Oregon Pipe when Trump was inaugurated, which was a total trip. Most of my colleagues had little faith that the wall would actually go up there. And I think there was a sense of just disbelief. I mean, this is a designated wilderness area, a UNESCO biosphere reserve. It's one of the most beautiful places in our state. And I think most of my colleagues just believed it couldn't happen. And it's just so heartbreaking now to be returning to Oregon Pipe almost every week and to watch the destruction unfold through this beautiful wilderness area.
No, completely understand. I think we actually have some video footage of Quito Baquito, ecological reserve, and over the years we've seen that it's on an ecological breakdown, and that many researchers and people have just said that with the border wall continuing to be built in this area, the area may not even be able to last. Is that true? I know we're seeing some footage now of it, and it looks like it's kind of still there. But over the last year, I've seen it completely just being dried out. There's just been a complete like desolate area. But what about your experience there, like?
Yeah, for sure. So to build the wall at Oregon Pipe, Border Patrol is extracting millions of gallons of groundwater, and they're turning that groundwater into the concrete foundation of the wall. And they suspended every single one of our nation's most important environmental laws, like the Clean Water Act, the Endangered Species Act, and others, in order to build the wall. So we're watching hundreds of millions of gallons of groundwater be pumped out of the ground, and that is directly depleting the aquifer that feeds this miraculous oasis. And Quito Baquito is right on the border. It's about 150 feet north of the physical border. And just last month, Border Patrol had finished putting the wall up just south of the springs. And that means all wildlife in Mexico, south of the border, is now unable to come and drink from these springs. And this is the most significant and important oasis and water source in the entire Sonoran Desert. It's truly miraculous. And it's on the brink of being destroyed forever for a vanity wall that obviously does nothing to keep our communities any safer down along the border.
So it could possibly. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, quick question. What are some of the species that are particularly affected? I assume everything is, but what are some of the most sensitive species that are disrupted by the wall and what's happening?
Yeah, great question. So at Quito Baquito, at this oasis, there are 2 endangered species that don't live anywhere else in the country. They only live at Quito Baquito. So if this spring is destroyed, that means extinction. It's over. We lose them forever. And one of them is called the Sonoyta mud turtle. It's this really cute desert turtle that thrives in the muddy, salty waters of Quito Baquito. And the other is the Quito Baquito pupfish, which is like a fish about the size of my thumbnail. The males turn this brilliant shade of blue when they're ready to reproduce. Incredible animals that don't live anywhere else in the country. And because the Trump administration waived the Endangered Species Act, there has been no analysis of whether or not these species might be pushed into extinction because of the border wall. And of course, there's so many other species like the Sonoran pronghorn and mule deers and even jaguars, which are native to Arizona, that are harmed by wall construction. But I mean, this project impacts species great and small. It destroys habitat. It pulverizes protected plants like the saguaro and Oregon pipe cactus. And again, just all for nothing, to no benefit to American people, Arizonans, and certainly not the environment down in the borderlands.
Eric, I want to jump to you a little bit and ask, what are you seeing out there? You've been down there for a bit now. What kind of feeling are you getting?
So I've spent most of my time between Nogales, Arizona, and Sonora. Actually, they have the same name for the city, but the Mexican town is much bigger than the American one. So that's about 70 miles south of Tucson. And I've spent a lot more time in the borderlands between there and the east towards Douglas. I've been to Oregon Pipe National Monument. It's administered by the National Park Service. But I've been there a few times. And so I'm really excited to see what's going on there. But most of the areas I've been have been pretty remote. And it's a very interesting experience going there. You see plenty of Border Patrol agents. I usually don't have any trouble with them in those areas, though. And that's been away from border wall construction. So my experience is more just driving through. They're used to seeing ranchers in that particular area. I know the border wall is being constructed there, so in the future I'll go there. But this is the first time I've ever been around the really, really bad part of the construction as far as desert habitat destruction.
I really want to turn really quick to all the viewers that are showing or that are viewing our broadcast right now. Thank you so much. This is a broadcast from HAPS, the network of now. You're joining in with us, who are just joining in with Lycan Jordahl. He is coming in from New Mexico, Santa Fe, New Mexico. And then we also have Eric Rosenwald, who's coming in live from Arizona, near the border of Mexico and the U.S., where later today, Eric is going to be giving us a first-person tour of what it's like to go through the border wall checkpoint, as well as going through the issues that are going on throughout the border. I wanted to also shout out to Cher from Twitter. We have a few other people, Brett Walker from HAPS, and then Lucia Ibar. Again, apologies if I'm totally butchering names here. Just for joining in. These are some great longtime HAP supporters, and we want to say thank you for joining the broadcast. Going back now to Lycan, how far is the border wall in its process of being completed in Arizona? With updates and with just what's going on, is there any more damage that it can cause?
Yeah, for sure. So as things stand right now, there've been about 200 miles of new wall built in Arizona. And Arizona has certainly been hit the hardest of all the border states. And all of this construction is taking place in wildlife refuges, in wilderness areas, in national monuments like Oregon Pipe. Basically, the government has picked these areas that were supposed to be protected for conservation purposes in order to build the wall first, because they control the land and they've waived all of the laws that require actually protecting the resources there. So as things stand right now, there's about 30 miles left in these contracts in Arizona to complete. And those are perhaps the most destructive 30 miles left, because they're in these rugged mountainous corridors where Border Patrol every single day is blasting mountains, literally blowing up these mountains to clear a path for the wall.
A question for both of you. How do we balance nature and safety?
Go ahead, Lycan.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an interesting question, but it's not, it's kind of like a false either or premise. The wall doesn't do anything to keep us safer. If people are worried about drugs coming into our country, we should focus our attention on the ports of entry, where 90% of hard drugs come across. Arizona just voted to legalize marijuana. We could go buy it at a dispensary at any point now. One of the only things that is still smuggled through the backcountry is Mexican marijuana. So it's like a false dichotomy. If we're really worried about safety and security, we should focus on addressing the root causes of immigration and drug consumption in this country.
Yeah, just adding to that a little bit on the security side, since I'm not as well versed like Lycan is on the natural resources issues. One thing I've noticed, especially in the San Rafael Valley, is that there's sort of this assumption that from a lot of ranchers that they're almost in cartel territory. I mean, there's smugglers travel through there, and there's really not many problems. I mean, it's just a very fascinating situation with the security side, that you have some smuggling, but you have plenty of Border Patrol agents, and you have ranchers right there, and it's a fairly safe place. It's kind of an interesting thing. So security isn't as much of an issue right there, even with some smuggling activities. It's still
Lycan, you mentioned smuggling activities, and I wanted to bring up the Oregon Pipe National Monument location that's been known for having a lot of actual smuggling for drugs, and just the cartel using it to smuggle drugs into the U.S. It doesn't happen every day where you could just go and you just see a line of people trying to smuggle drugs in, but it's consistent enough where it's known as a stereotype for being the place where it happens. How do you feel about that, for a national monument being one of the prime locations for smuggling? And is that even true?
Yeah, I think, back in the early 2000s, there was a lot more traffic at Oregon Pipe. There were a lot more apprehensions and more apprehensions of smugglers, but that has significantly changed. And now we've seen the real epicenter of migration and smuggling shift to South Texas and the Rio Grande Valley. But the whole reason that there is a lot of activity out in these serene wilderness areas like Oregon Pipe is because of the failings of our nation's border policies. The entire point of border walls and militarization is to push immigrants into these rugged, remote wildlands like Oregon Pipe, where hundreds of them die every year as a result of trying to make this trip. This year is on track to be one of the deadliest years ever along the Arizona border in Pima County. Hundreds of people have lost their lives trying to cross the border. And that's a result of Trump's policies making it so difficult for people to do it the right way, which is really funny because people always say, why don't they do it the right way? And that's because it's been made almost impossible to do that. So the tragedy now is that we've pushed migrants into these remote wildlands, and now border security activity is destroying places like Oregon Pipe. And none of this actually addresses the root cause of the situation to start with.
Eric, what about you? What do you think is one of the main issues or main problems when it comes to smuggling? Is this with the Oregon Pipe National Monument, or is this mostly just main points of entry? And is this on a decline or rise that you think?
As far as the decline or rise, I'm not sure on that, but the statistics are clear as far as most of the drugs coming across actual border ports of entry. There's some smuggling activity happening, but like said, most of that is cannabis, marijuana. So here's one example of this. Traveling through the San Rafael Valley, I will find dead trees on the side of the road. I started to realize there was a pattern. When you come across a dead tree right on the side of the road, it's not uncommon for that to be a marijuana transfer location where someone puts it there and it continues. So we're not talking about, for the most part, really, really expensive drugs like meth and cocaine and things like that through these particular areas. So, it's really mostly coming through those checkpoints. And one thing to remember, too, is that with the amount of traffic that's coming through these checkpoints, the Border Patrol has very little power to stop everything there. So the idea that it's all coming through the desert really doesn't hold up. And another interesting fact, I've talked with ranchers about this, too, is that every couple years, it's not uncommon in southern Arizona for there to be a federal court case against a Border Patrol agent for basically paying the cartels. Actually, right here in southern Arizona, it's just the Sinaloa cartel for the most part. That's why there isn't a whole lot of violence, because there aren't competing factions in Mexico fighting over this territory. So in some sense, it's very peaceful. But what will happen, it happens, like I said, there's a prosecution. It's not uncommon where a Border Patrol agent will be prosecuted for corruption, for basically selling trade secrets, usually things like routes and scheduling for patrols that go through certain areas. So that's a little side note that's interesting. But it's really not much of it is coming across the remote parts of the border the way it is through checkpoints. And it's a lot cheaper for smugglers to go through the checkpoints. I mean, they know a certain amount of their product is going to be caught. It's just part of the system, kind of like with retail stores, shrinkage, theft, shoplifting is just part of the reality, and you factor that into your business. So it really makes a lot more sense for these smugglers to travel through the ports of entry as opposed to the desert.
I know we keep talking about smuggling, and there have been a few people in the chat that have also brought up one of the other issues that they claim is one of the biggest issues, which is illegal immigrants just entering the country. So I wanted to ask either of you, possibly Lycan, if you want to answer this, specifically, how big is the illegal immigration problem down in Arizona, specifically at the border checkpoint where Eric's going to be checking out later today?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing record lows in terms of the numbers of immigrants coming to this country, and that was happening before Trump took office as well. And, the reality is we have a legal framework for allowing people to request asylum, people who are victims of political violence, people who live in unsafe situations.
It looks like Lycan just dropped out. His signal cut out for a second. So, Eric, about going to you, by chance, do you know, can you complete the thought that Lycan was talking about with the illegal immigrants entering the country and kind of gauging about how big the problem is in Arizona?
Yeah, I have seen those statistics on the numbers going down. There are several organizations that operate down here. One of them is called No More Deaths. There are groups activist groups. Hold on just a moment. I'm going to add Lycan back, send him an invite again here. Sorry about that. All right. Okay. These groups will sometimes leave water in certain parts of the desert. Other groups too actually go out and look for bodies of immigrants that have crossed over and have died out in the desert. There's even a group or a guy that goes out and brings a cross to known spots about that. I'm solo here. Sorry about this, viewers here. I'll just be a moment here. I'm inviting the contributors in. Okay. Sorry about the delay here. I'll continue here in a moment. Okay. All right. So I'm going to continue with the issue of immigrants that are crossing illegally out here. So one news story that's been a big deal lately is a group that has been setting up aid camps. Let's see here. Okay, let me turn the camera around so you all can see. Okay. So right now, that's my vehicle. I'm on the side of the highway that heads out towards Oregon Pipe National Monument, where I'll be headed. This is the view towards Tucson in that direction. And I'm right off of the highway here. I will be heading up in the direction you see right now. I'll zoom in to give you an idea of what it is. This environment is Sonoran Desert. So the Sonoran Desert is one of the more lush deserts. It's not like the Mojave Desert. It's very green out here. People who haven't been here are often surprised by how green it can be with many of the plants. So here's one of the mountains, Kip Peak National Observatory. A bunch of telescopes are up there. There are also some sacred sites to the Tohono O'odham Nation, a Native American tribe out here. And that's actually their tribe has abuts up against the border in many areas, right next to Oregon Pipe National Monument. So there are a lot of issues with the tribal agreements and things like that out here. Okay, I'm just going to take a look at the questions. Yes, it's actually kind of a hot day. I have some sunscreen here. So actually what I'm going to try to do after this broadcast, or maybe, when I wrap it up, is keep the camera on as I go through a Border Patrol checkpoint on my way over there. I'll be heading towards the border, so they actually don't stop you and talk to you there. They're, of course, interested in people coming from the border area. So just a side note. Okay, it looks like we have Marco back.
Hey, can you hear me, Eric?
Yes.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, by chance, were you able to answer the question that I asked right before I was leaving about the illegal immigrant issue that's happening down in Arizona, and whether or not that's actually an issue or what the trend is as of right now?
It's an issue. There's a very systematic way in which migrants are brought along the border. It can be a very, very dangerous space down there. But one of the issues that's come up is the Border Patrol has essentially raided some of these camps that are set up to by activists to provide water, to provide aid, things like that. So there has been some contention between the U.S. government and some of these groups that are there that are providing that water. And No More Deaths is one of the groups that leaves water out in the desert for migrants as they come through, so they don't die of dehydration. So that's such a big issue. Tucson, so much of the border area here is part of Pima County, and the county seat of Pima is in Tucson. So border-related issues as far as finding bodies of migrants out here end up in Tucson at the morgue down there. And there's really a fascinating story of there's a good documentary, I forget the name of it right now, where they outline what the process is for identifying these migrants and, if possible, sending their remains home. So it's not uncommon that they're able to do that. But unfortunately, most of these migrants are unidentified and are essentially put into a mass grave. It's a really amazing process, and seeing how it works. In this interview, or in this documentary, I'll try to follow up with that later on and get the name of that. They talk to the medical examiners and the staff that do that. So it's still very much an issue, but yeah, it's that and smuggling.
Yeah, no, completely. I want to thank everyone for joining us again for right now. For all those viewers who are joining our broadcast right now, we have Eric Rosenwald, who's a freelance reporter who's at the border in Arizona for the U.S. and Mexico border, giving us a firsthand look at what the border checkpoint will be like all throughout the day. He's going to be driving through it. He's going to show us a firsthand look of it. And then on top of it, we're going to be going through all the different kinds of issues and problems that are occurring within Arizona regarding the border wall, border issues, smuggling, with the ecological issues. We're going through it all, and Eric's the one who's on the ground there today. I also want to bring up the goal mark that we have for Eric. Eric, we have about a 20% out of the 100% $20 goal. This is also going to Eric to help support him in his trip today. So if you can make any donation through using the stickers, buy a coffee for Eric, this will go all to him, especially since this isn't a story that he is doing for anything else. This is only for HAPS, and this helps him out specifically. So he is spending his day to do all this coverage. So just a nod to that, and thank you for everyone who has tipped and who has given and donated a bit to get to reach this set goal. Eric, there's a question in the chat that I wanted to bring up moving forward. Specifically, it's from a Reddit user, Very Nice How Much, and it says, isn't the biggest story regarding immigration the hundreds of children that have been separated from their families and are now essentially lost? What do you think about that?
That's definitely an issue. It's hard to compare. I mean, it's hard to compare the two, because you have the issue of migrants that are moving across the border and dying, and then you have the family separation thing. So they're kind of two different issues. But I would say overall, the family separation is a really, really big one.
Right. Eric, moving a little bit forward, I wanted to ask a little bit about what are you expecting to capture on video today, for everyone who's now joining us? What are you expecting to see?
So, like I said before, I think we'll definitely be able to do it where I set the camera up. I'm only about a few miles away from a Border Patrol checkpoint that I'll go through, and I'll go through another checkpoint at the entrance of Organ Pipe National Monument. The shots I'm looking to get, and what I'll do is I'll pull over on the side of the road from time to time. It's cell phone reception permitting. I'm going to be keeping a close eye on that. So I don't know exactly when I'll be able to jump in on future broadcasts in the day. But of course, my other guests too will be, I'll automatically invite them. So I will be getting out to spots where you can see some of the natural features, especially the Oregon pipe cacti in the national monument there. I will also be flying my drone in the area, hopefully up real close to the border wall too. And I will be able to upload that footage and send it to you, Marco, so that you can include it like you were with some of Lycan's footage. So hopefully that'll be that. I won't have trouble with that. I'm a licensed commercial drone pilot, so I know how to do it safely and in a way that doesn't interfere with anything. So that's a big important thing. That way I can upload that footage and be able to talk about it, provide some context.
What are you expecting to see using the drone footage? I know we were just talking about the ecological damage all across the entire area that the border wall has been built. What are you expecting to see via the drone?
So one of the things that you can see is as they build the wall, they take a strip of land in the U.S. and just raise it. So you can see plenty of cacti and vegetation that had been pushed up against further into the desert to push it away from the wall. There's some really dramatic images of that that have come out, and Lycan has covered that quite a bit. So hopefully I'll be able to get into a spot where you can see that, fly the drone right up close to the wall. I've done this before. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. And so there's that destruction element. There's the physical wall. I might be in a place where I can actually film the construction workers as they're doing it. Now, one of the interesting things here, too, is that activists have been going out to these areas and doing a typical kind of direct action strategy where activists will chain themselves to construction equipment or sit in the buckets of like bulldozers or in one way or another. Okay, got it, Pablo. But in one way or another, stopping the construction or not for a period of time. And then law enforcement officers will come out and they'll, unchain them or remove them. That's something I don't expect to see today, but where I will be some of the prime areas where those activists have been active.
How effective is that method?
It's effective. It's usually effective for a few hours. But at the end of the day, it's the government and their ability to arrest you and get you out of there is, they're going to be able to do that. But it's often an opportunity to get photos, to bring awareness of what's happening. Arrests are a common part of that. You saw this kind of activity for the Standing Rock issues, things like that. There was a pipeline in Texas, a gas pipeline that was being held up in a similar way. So it's a long-standing strategy that activists will use to bring attention and to slow down progress of construction like the border wall.
Completely. Eric, specifically looking at where the border wall is now and looking at the political climate that the country is in, Arizona flipped blue, and President-elect Joe Biden won the election. So with that all being said, how likely is the border wall construction going to continue into the Biden administration when they take over?
I'm not sure on that. I think plenty of that is up in the air. Much of that depends on what the Trump administration is going to do in the last few weeks of the administration. There's still plenty that an administration can do at the last moment, especially with construction like this. So I don't think anyone really knows exactly how it's going to work. And I don't think we know the exact policy that the Biden administration is going to have. There are many, many factors. And like I said, much of that depends on what the Trump administration does in these last few weeks. So a lot of most of that is up in the air right now.
Okay. Eric, one thing I want to ask you specifically has to deal with a few people are talking about the ecological damage, other than just we talked earlier about the Quito Paquito area, but what other locations in Arizona that are being damaged because of the border wall?
So water areas are really really important, and I'm not sure how they're going to construct the wall across some of the rivers in Arizona. There are two very important rivers, the Santa Cruz River and the San Pedro River, in some of the areas that I've traveled a lot more to, between Nogales, Arizona, and Douglas, Arizona, sort of the more east of where I'm at right now. So these rivers are very, very important to the wildlife out there, and how you construct this wall over a river. The Quito Baquito Springs, it's a spring, but the river's different because it's actually flowing through. One interesting thing about the Santa Cruz River is that it starts in Arizona, heads south across the border, and then curves back around Nogales and heads back up into the United States through Tucson. So these rivers are very, very sensitive, especially the San Pedro River. There's a riparian area there. There's much of that land is protected, but at this point, the way the wall's being built, that doesn't really matter as much. Now, where I'm going today in Oregon Pipe Cactus National Monument, that's more of the actual Sonoran Desert. The rivers and places I was talking about just now, more to the east of here is more of an upland, grassland kind of environment. So it's a little bit different than the lower desert that I'll be in today. The saguaro cactus is I believe it's like the state plant or something for Arizona. It's the cactus that everyone thinks of when they think of Arizona. Those have been destroyed in great numbers where I'm headed, and you can see them. Especially you guys, viewers, can check out some of Lycan's work, where he shows photos and video of that destruction.
I think, Eric, one other big question that a lot of people are wondering is the border wall that has been completed actually working? Does it work?
Well, it's people are very, very creative, especially smugglers, and they can find ways to get across it. So I don't have numbers right now on exactly how effective it's been, and I think that there really aren't many because much of this wall has been constructed fairly quickly. So we'll find out. But one thing that I've always noticed is that smugglers are very creative, and they have an incredible ability to get around borders. Especially in remote areas too, because there's only so many border patrol agents that can patrol a given area. Oftentimes they go through washes. There are certain drainage areas where you have to let this water travel across the border. That's a common place people will cross. So it remains to be seen exactly how effective this will be. But it's definitely the case that these smugglers are determined and creative and come up with all kinds of clever solutions. One thing to bring up too about smuggling is that the Sinaloa cartel, and this was really I forget what his name. He was just the cartel leader who was just convicted, but the head of the Sinaloa cartel, he was very good with tunnel construction. And so that's another way drugs are smuggled that has nothing to do with a border wall. Building tunnels on one side of the border and having them go fairly far. In fact, that's how he escaped out of prison a few years ago. So that's one way in which a lot of drugs can come through, because if you're moving it through a tunnel, it's not going through a car. There's potentially no one is going to spot that. And it's a lot easier to move drugs through a tunnel than it is in a remote stretch of border where they're building a wall.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. We have a few comments, Lucia posts, El Chapo Guzman, big name especially. What's specifically with his influence with the border and with the cartel in this area? Do you know a bit about that, or would you be able to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, yeah. This stretch of border in Arizona is dominated by the Sinaloa cartel, and that was El Chapo Guzman, the head of that. Now things have changed a little bit with his arrest and incarceration. He won't be getting out of jail, so his family though is still very active in it. So things have been changing a little bit, but it's still, this area is dominated by the Sinaloa cartel, and you just don't see the same kind of violence between cartels and between smugglers that you see in like places like El Paso, Juarez, places like that, because that kind of cartel violence tends to happen in areas where it's disputed territory. And along this stretch of the border, it's really not disputed at all. The Sinaloa cartel is dominant here. So in some sense, it's peaceful, and it's the same way with Tucson. You just don't see that kind of cartel violence spilling up into Tucson, because Tucson is a Sinaloa town in that sense too. So with Tucson being sort of a gateway to this part of Mexico and Sonora. So
Well, the one thing I wanted to go ahead.
They have very, very well set, very well planned out routes and the tunnels.
Yeah, no, completely. I wanted to direct this to the audience who's watching us right now. What are your questions? We'd love to hear what you have to say, and if you have any questions specifically for Eric and what he's about to see and his entire experience that he'll be experiencing and showing us later today with the first person border checkpoint viewpoint of what it's like to actually go through a border checkpoint at the Mexico-US border. You can talk to us via social media, HAPS. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, to point out real quick, I won't be crossing the U.S.-Mexico border, but I travel through internal border patrol checkpoints where they're checking cars as they come across. So oftentimes they catch people there. You'll see Border Patrol, Customs and Border Protection press releases where they show photos at these checkpoints. So I just want to point that out. One thing someone mentioned is mules. This is an interesting phenomenon. Sometimes people are unwitting mules. You'll have, there's a helicopter coming over here. Actually, I think it's this one's a military helicopter. You see plenty of Customs and Border Patrol helicopters flying from Tucson. There's a major headquarters, the Tucson sector, that is in charge of a very large stretch of border. That's in Tucson, so you often see helicopter traffic flying from behind me. Tucson is behind me, flying out to these border areas. But someone here mentioned mules. So one thing that happens sometimes is you'll have travelers from the United States that head to any particular tourist destination in Mexico, and while they're there, their vehicle will have drugs loaded into it. Like what often happens is it's inside tires, because people, don't necessarily check their tire when they're out there unless you need to change the tires. So tires are often a great place to smuggle drugs. And so sometimes they'll put GPS trackers on that vehicle, or, keep track of the license plate, what the vehicle looks like. And these people will unwittingly be mules carrying drugs across the border. And then these cartels will go out to that person's house or something like that and remove the drugs, and they're off. So there've actually been prosecutions of people, false prosecutions, really. I don't know his name right now, but there's a U.S. attorney that has actually taken it upon himself to defend people who have been unwitting mules like this. So that's an interesting side aspect to all this too.
Yeah.
And then of mules that you have the body cavities, but this is an example, like I'm saying that before, cartels are very, very creative, and it's a cat and mouse game. and they're always ahead of the game. They will always be ahead of the game, and it's such a large, expansive area out here. You would really need an army to stop smuggling out here, and even then, that might not be enough.
How often does that happen, Eric?
As far as the unwitting mules, I'm not sure. I've heard of about like 12 cases. So that's cases that have been prosecuted or became a big issue, like with this attorney. But it's tough to say exactly how often that's happening with people. But most of it is people who know they're being mules. So.
Mm-hmm. And then again, we have another comment from Lucia who asks, what part will you be showing us later today?
So I don't know if you have any map graphics in here. I can send some to you so you can put on broadcast later on. But I'll continue traveling west about 100 miles to Ajo.
It looks like we're having a little bit of a technical difficulty. Eric's connection's lagging just a bit. Well, Eric we're having technical difficulties, but I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap it up here today. So thank you so much again for everyone who was able to show up and attend our broadcast. My name is Marco Torres, the host of this. We had Eric Rosenwald, who is out at Arizona, near the border, between the Mexico and U.S. border, where later today he's going to be showing us what a checkpoint looks like within the U.S. and really show, all the different problems and issues that are going on. He's going to be also getting drone footage of the area and show a little bit more of the ecological breakdown that's going on at this border wall area. We also had Lycan Jordahl, who was a former Park Service employee at the Oregon Park, and also he's a Borderlands campaigner. And he also provided some of the amazing drone work that you guys saw earlier today. But we wanted to thank you all for attending this HAPS, the Network of Now production. This means a lot to us. And again, Eric will be coming back on throughout the entire day today. And myself and a few other people will also be attending and showing up again. So we hope you guys continue following this broadcast. And as for the rest of you, thank you again. Please like, share, comment, and we hope to see you guys again. All right. Thank you.